Why do the Chinese eat everything? There's this guy who caused a lot of pain in their history. Mao Zedong, one of the most selfish people in history, and a prime example of what happens when you give a selfish maniac a lot of power. He rose to power during the Chinese Civil War in 1921, becoming the leader of the communist forces. And after the communists won the war in 1949, he established the People's Republic of China and ruled the country until his death in 1976. In 1958, Mao launched what's known as the Great Leap Forward. The goal was to leave behind the old culture and create a new industrialized China. Sounds good on paper, right? But the reality was different. Mao, with his obsessive desire, built industrial cities and created giant communes. People in these communes lived inside state-controlled factories, and their entire lives revolved around work. They were paid mostly in food, just enough to survive. Those who refused to work probably ended up 6 feet under those factories. Of course, to feed this massive workforce, similar slave labor agricultural communes were also established, and unbelievable production quotas were imposed. The madman Mao wanted people to focus on only 2 things: industrial production and food production. To erase everything else, and I mean everything, from people's memories, he launched a movement in 1966 called the Cultural Revolution. He aimed to completely sever the Chinese people's ties to their past. Think about it, we're talking about one of the oldest and most important ancient civilizations in the world. But one of their own emerged and aimed to erase this memory under the guise of modernization. And what did he do? From traditional craftsmen to anyone who kept any historical book, object, or even the smallest material from those times in their homes, they were sent to labor camps and worked to death. Craftsmen's hands were cut off, and those with any religious beliefs were killed. During this period, all temples related to ancient Chinese philosophy were attacked, and many were destroyed, their ancient texts burned. Can you imagine an operation to erase people's past, beliefs, values, their very identity? And they were doing this to their own people. Unbelievable production quotas, pressure on the people, culture being destroyed day by day, and a path with no clear destination. Remember, the Chinese don't rebel easily. The last straw came from a very different place. Sparrows. The year is 1958, and Mao sees himself as a god. Of course, this ignorant megalomaniac and his team made a simple observation. They saw little sparrows eating spilled grain, and they made a very simple deduction. Sparrows eat grain, so these sparrows must be eating the grain in the fields. And they thought, we won't be able to meet our quota. That's when things blew up. The order known as Kill the Birds was sent throughout the country, demanding the hunting and killing of all sparrows. It couldn't get any more foolish, could it? But it did. And the Chinese people, now practically robots, carried it out with great honor. Tens of millions of birds were slaughtered, and this event was celebrated as a great success. But this inhumane massacre would have terrifying consequences in the following years. It is said that there was a slight increase in production in the first harvest after the birds were killed, but a tiny increase. Of course, while Mao and his cabinet thought this would lead to even greater increases in the future, a different problem began to emerge. Something like out of the Bible and the Torah began to happen. An endless invasion of locusts and insects. Stay tuned for the continuation.